Hi everyone, I'm Brianna and welcome to Roll Initiative. Today we're going to be talking about some tips on role-playing for DMs. So, let's get started. Role-playing other creatures makes up a huge part of a DM's job, as you control every creature other than the party that they happen to run into. And that can be a lot of work, and it can be really hard to roleplay so many different NPCs while keeping them interesting and making them different from one another. So now we're going to look at some different things that you can do to make that easier. NPCs aren't like player characters, and they do not need anywhere near the amount of depth that they have. So, for their personality, I think it's really helpful to just come up with 3 different traits to help describe their personality. You could have a town guard who's gullible, courageous, but hot tempered. And just like that, you have a really simple NPC personality that's going to be really easy for you to play and keep in mind when you're role playing them, and it's going to be very different every time you change this up. It also really helps to give them some sort of goal, dream, or motive, such as maybe the guard wants to move to a bigger city and become a guard at the palace. The main thing here is to focus on key traits. NPCs do not need the level of detail that player characters have. So just try to focus on a couple of simple traits. Role-playing is so much more than just doing a voice. While it's a really useful tool and it's really fun to do, you don't have to do a voice to roleplay. And a lot of the time, more experienced DMs will focus a lot more on the social dynamics at the table other than doing voices and that sort of thing. It doesn't matter if your voices aren't perfect. If you can create the desired atmosphere at your table, then that is good DMing. It doesn't matter if your accent slips or your voice isn't perfect. If you can create the atmosphere you want at the table, then that is going to be really awesome. And some things that you can do with your NPCs to help do this is to focus on just a couple things. One is giving your NPC a single dominant emotional state. That means that they have a dominant emotion, whether that's happiness or even anger. Then everything the NPC does is going to be filtered through that emotion, and you'll still get an interesting character, but they're going to be much simpler to play, and it's going to mean that you can get a lot of different personalities by giving them different dominant emotions. It doesn't mean that they can't have other emotions, this is just their main one. And you also need to focus on how these NPCs are going to affect your players. You want to figure out how they're going to make them feel. Because while your players may not remember all the details about an NPC, they're going to remember how an NPC made them feel. And that is very important to creating an atmosphere. In the end, all you can really do to improve your skills is to practice. Learning tips like the ones in this video are going to help, but the only real way that you can get better is if you actually go out and practice. Because no matter how many of these videos you watch, you're not going to get better unless you practice. So if you really want to get better at this, then practice. It is the only way that you're going to really improve. But there we go, that's the end of this video, and I really hope it was helpful and that you enjoyed it. And if you did, then I'd be really grateful if you'd consider giving it a like, or even subscribing to my channel. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.